Hey, it's Jeremy from Jeremy.net. I am a comic book artist, writer, creator, self-publisher, and I share my creative process with you here online. If you'd like to get additional bonus live streams twice a month where we do deep dives in some of the best educational art books around, you can become a Patreon subscriber for as little as $2 a month. Head over to patreon.com/GERIMI and subscribe. There we also have, you get access to a online digital archive where you can read my comic books. You also get access to a Patreon exclusive Discord server where we share process, tips, feedback, work in progress, journal art, shop talk as well. All that for as little as $2 a month. Patreon.com/Jeremy. If you'd like to get a free digital sketchbook, work in progress animated gifts delivered right to your inbox, blog posts about what I'm reading, what I'm watching, what's inspiring me creatively, you can sign up for my free monthly newsletter at newsletter.jeremy.net. And if you'd like to purchase physical copies of my comic books or if you read digitally on Kindle, you can go to amazon.jeremy.net. You can pick up books like my first graphic novel, Eye of the Gods. It is a standalone black and white psychological thriller about a man cursed with visions he cannot control. You can also pick up my most recent comic book, Morning Star. It tells the story of Lucifer's fall from heaven as a Western. It's an 8-issue series. Volume 1 contains issues 1 through 4. Volume 2 contains issues 5 through 8, the conclusion to the series. Both volumes have extensive back matter, script excerpts, page thumbnails, layouts, character designs, photo reference, and more. I basically show you how I put the comic book together. Check all that out. And there are book flip-throughs on the homepage of the YouTube channel to check out. In addition, at my my main website, jeremy.net, and you can also just find it by going to prints.jeremy.net. As I mentioned last week, I recently completed a couple of new, 4 different new art prints. So it's a series I've been doing, the Gorgon Emerging series. This series, it's I did, here, let me just go ahead and go into it. So I did 4 different color versions, red, green, blue, and a warm gray. So this is the Medusa illustration that I have been working on for the past few months. I'm gonna have to hide that Prince thing because it's too big. There we go. Now you can see the whole thing. So I've got them in 2 different sizes, 16 by 20, 8.5 by 11. This is the whole illustration there. So those are some new things I just wanted to let you guys know, and I'll be mentioning those for the next few weeks just to give people reminders that I've got some new stuff out there. All right, so we have a special treat today. Already in the chat, we've got Tyler. He goes by the handle Harmless Horrors, and after this live stream is over, I'm going to put a link in the description of the video so you can check out Tyler's Instagram. But it's at Harmless Horrors. And we talked last week. He had mentioned he had a couple of pieces that he wanted me to take a look at and give some feedback. And I think this is going to be a new thing. So if you guys have some stuff that you want me to do some drawovers on, whether it's anatomy, comic book storytelling, in this case, it's some character designs. And, I just said, yeah, sure. Just tag me on Instagram and I will take a look. So, Tyler, feel free to correct me. Tyler's watching in the comments right now, so he's there. And he said basically he's got his own idea, his own IP for character. And there's one character who controls androids. He's a human who controls these androids to battle a supervillain, like billionaire terrorist. And the main characters that we have here that we're going to look at today are a robot drone that he uses to carry out his axe. That's that spherical shape that's up there. And then the villain's father has been converted to a cyborg. And so we're going to take a look at these 3 different characters and try to see what we can shake up here in terms of like what we can add to it to zhuzh up these character designs. Now, before we go any further, I want to take a slight detour because there's a book that I'd like to recommend. And Tyler, I'd like to recommend this book to you, but also to the wider audience, because I think it's one of the best books that I've seen in terms of character design and world building. So it is a book that is published by Scott Robertson's Design Studio Press. And Scott Robertson, great instructor at Art Center, vehicle design, concept design instructor. Let me see if I can bring up the cover a little bit larger here. And this book is one that I've had in my library for years now. And what the book has is that it basically is 3 of Scott Robertson's students all working through the same assignment for school. So this is a book of a bunch of his students, classwork. And the project was to do visual development for a Grimm's fairy tale, the fairy tale, The Skillful Huntsman. And what's beautiful about this book is that you see 3 different students give very distinct, their own different takes on how to do character designs, the different characters, environments, weapons, and they show you through their thinking process, them doing thumbnails, them iterating through character silhouettes, all the different process. You get to see them design both characters and vehicles and creatures. It's a great book in showing you multiple artists doing visual development, their different approaches, how they're similar, how they're different. And I think it's a great template for you to use for anyone who's doing world building to sit down and say, all right, I'm just going to go through these steps with my IP, with my story, with my comic book, with my video game, whatever it is that I'm developing. I think that this book is really great for helping you do your world building. So I highly recommend it. I'm just showing you that it's on Amazon, but I'll put an affiliate link in the description for the video afterwards. So it's called The Skillful Huntsman. And let's see here. All right. And I see Gary's in the chat. Afternoon. Thanks for hanging out. And Harmless Horror says, I have my sketchbook open to draw your redesigns. See Jared in the chat. He says, hey, what's happening? We're going to be doing some character designs or some character design redesigns, as it were. So one of the things that I took away from, let me switch my brushes here real quick. That I took away from the Scott Robertson book was the power of working out silhouettes before you go into the actual characters, because you can kind of work the characters together and see how they play and contrast against each other. That's why a lot of times when you look at books on animation or character designs, they tend to have character lineups. So I think that one of the handy things here is I'm drawing digitally, and I turned on the grid so that we can sit down and I can start with saying, all right, well, how tall are these characters going to be in relation to each other? Now, let's say that and let me change this to full black. Make sure it's black. All right. Now we can always come in and blow these up larger later, but you know what? I'm going to start small, and then we can blow them up as we need to. But the idea here is to start with very simple thumbnail sketches and maybe do multiple versions side by side. So I'm just trying to decide, all right, let's say that the human is going to be 4 of these squares tall. I might decide that the villain is going to be 1 square taller. So he's going to intentionally be this big, massive guy. Now, the sphere, the drone, we also want to decide, because it's something that's floating, maybe I'll base him about at the head height of the figure, but maybe he's half as tall as a human, as the human body. Now, I've got a quick diagram that I had already pre-drawn above here where it says, different shape languages. And these are just sort of the basics. So there's a deeper study of what shapes say about mood and feel. But generally, it breaks down to squares are stable, round forms are peaceful, angular or triangular forms are aggressive. So maybe we want to make, instead of, now I'm not saying that the sphere shouldn't be, that drone shouldn't be round, because I think to a certain degree that can, the round shape can be creepy if properly treated. There's an old TV show called The Prisoner. And one of the creepiest things about it was that there was this floating orb that would just float around and just suck people in like the blob. And it was sort of a weapon that you would use to, to capture people that were dissidents on this island full of spies. Hey, I see Corey Kerr's in the chat. Hey, Corey, how you doing? Thanks for popping in. One of the art casters swinging by for a little bit just to hear what's going on. Always good to see you. Right. So I already started thinking, and I can tell you now, I need to scoot some of this over. I will tell you that there's two things. First off, let me scooch these lines over so I'm going to have some room. The two things are drawing multiple thumbnails next to each other. Don't necessarily, it's not about sitting there and drawing one character until you get them perfect. It's like doing 1 version, 2 version, 3 versions, 4 versions, 5 versions, and just trying, different elements just to see how it looks. Like, what does it look like if this, the drone is maybe still a round form, but has like, I don't know. You have him with some jets on the side. And I'm thinking, what if he's got like a weird triangular propulsion unit that sort of hovers that's attached to the top? I'm trying to think, what are some things we can do to make him look more aggressive? And the other thing is, in terms of working in silhouette, this is something that for the longest time, it just didn't really vibe with my approach, how I think of things. But what I have learned, or what broke it through for me, is actually something that I didn't learn from the Scott Robertson book. It's something I learned from Schoolism. I took a class with Nico Lockerstern, or I took his online course on I believe it was his Intro to Procreate course. But in that, he does a lot of a lot of silhouette character designs. And the problem I'd had with silhouette, and I'm going to draw a little figure over here to the right, is that I always thought that you had to like start with your head and then work out like where are your arms and know exactly like where you need your legs to be. Like, I always thought that you had to like draw these perfect silhouettes and then fill them in, and that you're supposed to like know as you sketch what it's supposed to be. And what I have found instead is to treat working in silhouette the same way I treat doing figure drawing, which is I almost treat it like, you know what, I'm going to have to go ahead and erase these lines over here. We'll come back to the drone in a minute, but I just want to mention this because this is something that I had problems with in terms of working in silhouette, and it might be helpful to everyone to say, all right, instead, just think of the silhouette as you're drawing a stick figure. You've got like your simple stick for your head, you know, block for the torso, the legs, the arms. And then once you've got that, to say, all right, I'm going to give him shoulder pads. I'm going to give him a helmet that comes out and up like two horns. I'm going to, you know, put some armor around his waist. I've decided I want him to have super, super thick boots. Just give him big boots. Little horns sticking off of the boots. Let me zoom in a little bit more because I'm working very tiny on this screen right now. You might say, all right, can give him some gauntlets. And then you decide, you know what? I want to bend his arm because even though he's got this kind of samurai look, I'm going to bend his arm and have him holding some sort of weird plasma rifle. The point being here, what I'm trying to explain is instead of it being like you're working out the outline perfectly and you have to know exactly what it is, it's more of treating it like a piece of clay. You're sculpting. And not only are you sculpting, adding pieces on like this, but I'm going to switch to the eraser and I'm going to carve out of this process. So, I've got these, this weapon here that he's holding, this rifle. You might switch to the eraser and say, all right, I'm going to put, whoops, that line's way too big. Let me put some horizontal slashes across here, cuts into the armor. You might decide, all right, I don't need this little piece of the arm that's hanging down there because that was where the arm was going straight down. Drawing in and refining the shape of the gun or the forearm. So you can refine these shapes. It's not like you have to know exactly what the silhouette's going to be when you're starting. And I think that freedom to chop off parts of the silhouette, like I might, draw this leg and I might say, oh, wait, you know what? I think I want the horn small on the inside, but big on the outside. So you might chop part of this off, then come back and add more. It's that freedom to just throw some pieces on, take some other pieces off, some spikes coming off of the shoulder pads. These are things that I'm recommending for your characters. This is more about my overall approach to working in silhouette that I have found is a lot more freeing and liberating. And I might decide, oh, wait, I want this guy to have that big torso, but I want to give him like a tiny little wasp waist. Like almost inhumanly tiny. And put some, I don't know, some circular pieces on his hip, some elliptical pieces. Point being is that this whole idea of just tossing pieces on, taking pieces off, that's something that working in silhouette will make it easier for you to go through these iterations. By the way, and also Tyler says that the heights that I'd laid out, he said that that's perfect. We'll come back to the heights after I play with the drone a little bit more. But he says the cool thing about the main character, his name is Alexi, is that he has many android bodies that he can control. That's a cool thing. So it's almost like Iron Man with the different suits of armor. So one of the things that I thought of in terms of how to make this drone design is I always like to say, do a couple of passes that are similar to where you start and then see what happens if you start really breaking the function these things do. Like I see that he has a lot of detail on his surface, like some cool like lines that kind of show where the metal plates connect and give the sense of technology. And there's like lights in a control panel. The nice thing about working with the silhouette is you can really go in and say, for instance, in this one, let me go back up again. Actually, it's probably easier to fill this. I know I could just color drop to fill it. I don't know why I'm actually filling it in. But anyway, even if you're sticking close to the original design, you can come in here and with this simple silhouette, Just draw a line. Let me put this a little bit lower. And the thing about designing with just black, and in this case, instead of black and white, it's black and the absence of light, because I'm erasing where the black is that it just gives you a strong sense of how much detail you really do or don't need. Because yeah, there's a lot of cool little technical details in the design you had there, but you might say, all right, for the intents and purposes, the line that runs down the middle might be the one important detail. And maybe it's something where you might decide, okay, kind of like the Cylons on Battlestar Galactica, maybe he's got a light that flashes and kind of moves back and forth across that little band that is his, for all intents and purposes, is his eye. And he's just got like a couple of angry looking wedges down here for a speaker or a mouth. Maybe just a couple of vents on one side. Actually, you know what? Let's do these as curved vents. Actually, you know what? The circles give it a good change of pace. That's a little too much. But you know what? I don't want to overthink it, because that's one of the advantages of this, is that you just do it in a really simple form, and you can just go change stuff up, try different things. Oh, and something else I wanted to mention. So I'm working digitally. I know that you may not necessarily have a tablet to work with. You can still do this approach even if you don't have a tablet. What I would recommend is just simply getting a pad of graph paper so that you can draw on grids. I normally don't draw on grids, but when you're doing character design, it is very useful in terms of the thing that we talked about, being able to tell how the characters are related to each other in terms of size, proportion, that sort of thing. But what you can do is you can just get a sheet of graph paper, some Sharpies, and some whiteout. So the areas where you decide to sculpt back into the piece, where you may draw something and then decide, oh wait, I'm gonna white out this area to draw in detail. Or let's say you just decide, something is too tall or too short here. I'm gonna refine it and add some elements. That's where you would use the whiteout. And I actually would recommend, there's a, there's a very specific pen, whiteout pen, that I use, and normally it's in my little art tools by my desk, and I don't see it. But it's called the Presto. I think it's called the Presto Magic Correcting Pen. It's something that's also made by Pentel. I see the Skeleton King is in the chat. They said, I heard comics and had to join this. Awesome. Well, welcome. Thank you. We're going over Harmless Horrors, Tyler's character designs for his own comic. And I was just giving him some feedback on some possible approaches and changes to the character. I will definitely tell you that the angular approach, that's kind of a no-brainer. Like, if you want something to feel aggressive and hostile, triangular shapes are the way to go. But I see what you were doing. Like I mentioned with that TV show, The Prisoner, I see the potential in sticking with a round spherical design. So this is more of me just doing shape exploration, which that to me is probably the biggest part of character design, is just the journey of trying out different shapes. Like you can see that even though I really roughly drew in a triangle, I'm going in here now in this triangular shape, and now I'm erasing out parts to kind of shape it to something that's maybe a little bit not as vertical as the original thing I drew in. And one of the things too, it's a fine balance when you're doing thumbnails, because you don't want to get so precious about it that you're starting to make a finished illustration. What you want is a sheet full of what looks like really quickly drawn icons almost that you can start comparing and deciding, how do I feel about this? And working digitally, I do have the advantage that I can take a sketch like this, I can grab it. Actually, I want to copy paste. That's what I want to do. Move it down here, and I can say, all right, well, this guy, I like how he looks, but let's say that you could do something where instead of having those large engines that way, maybe he's got small vents or jets that are running down each side of him. Trying to decide where to place them. And originally I did this, I was planning to make the middle one kind of the larger one, but now that I see it, I'm like, that actually I think does work better where they're getting progressively larger, because even on a shape level, it makes this guy feel more threatening. Like this drone feels almost like a demon now. But like I mentioned before, going back to the prisoner example, I think that there's something about the one that's the first of these five, where I sort of made it like a bullseye. Maybe it's something where, let me merge these layers. Maybe it's something where it's just little wires that support them, or maybe somehow it's got like some sort of anti-gravity or magnetic device so that it's like a three-dimensional ring that has a sphere floating inside of it. And it gives you a sense of a creepy eye that's following you wherever you go. In fact, here's an idea. Maybe the whole thing is maybe magnetic powered, and it's got other magnets floating around it, almost like an atom or something. And the magnets help both propel it, and they also can maybe swing off and kind of do a physical percussive, just kind of slamming into and breaking through things. And then all of a sudden, that creature could, let's say that, what am I thinking? In the middle, like something starts glowing and it can shoot like powerful laser beams out of that center area, like an iris. So it looks like it's a floating eye that's going around, just floating, doing. I mean, this is my horror tendencies leaking in, but I think that bringing something that's makes in sci-fi, making something that feels eerie or threatening, is really powerful. Bringing different feelings to science fiction. It could almost be something where you've got like let's say I'm going out of the silhouette here just for a second to say, all right, so you've got this floating ring, and all of a sudden it'll just go and it's like cities burning, cars on fire, just devastation and destruction. So that's a way in which, even though I was trying to shy away from, or trying to say that maybe there's ways to do more exciting shapes than the ring, than just that sphere with the jets on top, I think that it's also all in the execution. Like, how can you make the circle something that's more than a circle? And the idea of making the drone now a creepy eye that burns things, that just takes your design and tweaks the context of it. And when we first talked last week, I sent you a message, and one of the things I asked was what was motivating the villain. And basically the fact that he's a guy who wants to just destroy the companies and destroy his competition, like any, like business, they're competitive, they're trying to beat their competitors, but he's trying to destroy, and while he's doing these attacks, he's going and like killing the owners of the company so that he can take over their businesses. Knowing why, and I mentioned this in the text exchange we have, but knowing why your characters do what they do helps influence the character design. It should influence the character design. It's specifically the idea that the way that villain, the goals that he wants and how he's going to use these machines will influence the design. Because just like design in general, like doing product design, they say have an expression, it's a very old expression, form follows function. Meaning that, yes, we want to make things look beautiful, we want to make things look elegant, we want to make things look pretty. But first and foremost, the form needs to serve the function of the device. If a refrigerator door doesn't shut or it doesn't keep the temperature in, it doesn't matter how cool you design that refrigerator door to look, it doesn't do the job. So the first things first is, what is the job it needs to do? So you might actually want to think in your stories about scenarios, like you might have drones that instead of being this circular sphere, maybe it's something where he's going to destroy an underwater mining, like an oil rig. So maybe it's become something where the drone is instead something like some weird segmented, like barracuda fish device that kind of like undulates, and maybe just has like some cool fins at the end. And it might be something that's sort of this does not feel like an elegant silhouette. It doesn't feel like it undulates. And I don't know why I have to keep saying undulate. Well, because that's what I imagine the movement to feel like. But sometimes I get stuck on repeating really weird words, and undulate is a weird word. Maybe it's something where it's a drone that has all of these segments and has a swim like like that movie Megan. Maybe it's got like a weird Megan swim where it's like, or it looks like a rattlesnake kind of going from side to side. Or maybe it's made up of, maybe that's something. Another thing to think about is these drones. Let's say you've got the floating drones, whether you keep the jets on the side or do something different with them. Maybe it's a matter of the drones maybe can work not just alone, but maybe the drones become a segment, like a worm. They get closer to each other, and it's almost like they use that gravitational or anti-gravitational, whatever their propulsion is, maybe they use that together and they become like a giant snake where they're held together with through their own magnetic attraction to each other, but then they become like either a serpent that's maybe swimming undersea, or they become like a giant whip. Like imagine a whip made of wrecking balls. Could be something like that. Now we spent already like 30 minutes just on the drone. We really should move to the other characters, because part of the thing that I was going to get to was designing them in comparison to each other. Let's see here. The Skeleton King also says, I love any comics because I grew up drawing Todd McFarlane's Spawn comics. He says, I'm not that well of an artist, but I love the muscle tones of that one sketch. I know it's off topic, but I had to say it. I think he's talking about the muscle tones of Tyler's sketch up here with the character. I think that those are some cool muscle designs there, both with the cyborg and with the android. So going to the characters now. One of the things, the reason for designing characters kind of side by side, and I tend to go back and forth, where I will start with one character and I'll do a bunch of thumbnails of it, and then another character, a bunch of thumbnails. And when I get to, let's say that I did what I just did here for all three of these characters, then I would take whichever is my favorite and I would put those on a sheet together, and then I would start tweaking them in terms of size, angle, trying to make sure that I'm not necessarily repeating the same shape language for each character. Because what you want is contrast when you have characters. Ideally, a good silhouette will read where no matter what, no matter where the scene is, that if you just see the character in full silhouette and you have the word balloon, or even if you have no word balloons, you should be able to tell who that character is. You know, like if I draw this silhouette, now mind you, I don't draw this character very often. And this is more about, if you can't tell who it is, it's more about my poor drawing abilities and less about the character not having a readable silhouette, because I feel like the character has an extremely readable silhouette. And that's the reason why I chose him. But shout out in the chat if you know who this is that I'm drawing. Let's see here. All right. Well, then I guess I'm really that I think that shit just shows that I'm not that good at drawing him, because we've got the Batman and the Green Goblin. Corey knows. Corey said Wolverine. Yes. So it is not the greatest Wolverine. I acknowledge that. But I wanted to see if I could do it without drawing the claws, because obviously the minute I put the claws in, that's a dead giveaway. But I wanted to see if I could do it with just the head and see if you guys could get it. So that's the idea here is yeah, I mean, and honestly, I know Skeleton King says Batman, and I knew that just because of the points and that I was drawing him in profile, that Batman would be a possibility that people would come up with. But I Point being is that, it was still readable. I think that someone like if, Mark Silvestri or Andy Kubert did a silhouette of Wolverine, you'd be like, oh, yeah, I get it. That was just me taking a quick pass. All right, I'm getting distracted. Skeleton King, yes, you were close. Yeah, guys, don't feel bad about not seeing it, because that's more about my ability to draw Wolverine than it is about you guys being able to read silhouettes. That ain't on you, that's on me. But in drawing characters, what you want is contrast. I'm going to put that here in our notes. Big, medium, small. You want to have your big character, your medium character, and your small character. Now, in this case, it could be that the human character is the medium character, and the drone could be the small character. It could be that the drone could be the big character, the human is the small character, and the cyborg is the cyborg villain could be the medium character. That's another thing. Coming down here, I'll have to create a new sheet soon, because I'm probably going to want to. In fact, you know what? Let's just go ahead and create a new sheet now, or a new layer, rather, so I can get into. In fact, let me turn off that little note so we can have Tyler's designs up here while I'm drawing. So let's say for now, I'm going to stick with the sphere as a creepy eye. Let's consider the possibility of Alex being, actually here, let me go back to the size that I originally said I was going to make them. So let's say Alex is going to be 4 of these squares tall. The drone's going to be 2 squares. Cyborg going to be 5 squares. I'm just going to put a little ground plane here. Now, from your design, it definitely looks like you want the android, Alex, to be tall and slender. That seems like that is part of what your aesthetic for the character is. So I'm going to push and make maybe I don't want to make the head too long, but let's see what happens if we take that rib cage I'm trying to decide what is a good take on this. Maybe it's a matter of maybe pushing the shoulders up a little bit and giving him arms that are maybe oversized, because normally his arms would not go down this long. When you do stuff like this, the important thing to remember is to exaggerate it so that it doesn't look like a mistake. Because it's one thing to simply draw a character and, exaggerate his proportions a little bit. When you exaggerate a little bit, what happens is people will just look and say, oh, he drew weird, the legs don't look right, or the arms don't look right. So if you're gonna push things out of the normal proportions, it's good to push them far enough that the viewer knows that it is an intentional decision. So maybe we've got him elongated here And who knows if the drone is a circle. And this is again up to you. You're definitely the proportions that he has right now for your character is almost like a skinny Snake Eyes from GI Joe. You know, you're keeping him kind of like a lean, athletic build. And the point of doing silhouette design and shape design is to see just whether you can break those concepts. Maybe come up with a design that feels a little bit more innovative, that feels distinctly like, oh, this is your character. Like right now, he looks like Snake Eyes as a robot, which is not a bad idea. If you just say robot Snake Eyes, that sounds like a cool character. But you can play with different elements. Now, in comparison, you know, I wrote on the other page contrast. Alexi, he says his character's name is Alexi. I've been calling him Alex. Apologies. Let's see here. Gary also says, I would have guessed Wolverine too, but I think his front silhouette is more iconic. Yeah. I'm not even sure why I decided to go with a profile, but that's what was in my head when I closed my eyes and imagined sketching him out. But anyway, now mind you, when I'm giving you I'm actually not necessarily giving you notes on your character design per se. I'm talking more about ways to approach refining the character design, because the fact of the matter is the thin, athletic Snake Eyes as a robot, that might be the right way to go. So my whole thing here is let's explore different ideas and maybe give you some concepts of how to explore and play with different ideas before locking down a particular look. Now this is starting to look too much like the logo for Target. Maybe there's something about making the eye tiny and making the sphere something that grows and changes. For some reason, it looked more like a creepy eye looking at you on the other sheet. I guess it still does look kind of like the Target logo, but that is something to be aware of. Is sometimes you won't, like, I know a lot of times I'll draw something and I won't see what it turned into or what it looks like until way later. Maybe it's something of filling it in like this. I mean, hell, maybe it's also an idea that that sphere that's in the center, maybe that sphere that's in the center is like a black hole. Go small with the eraser here. Put some Kirby crackles. Going inside. These drones are spheres with black holes in the center. Floating rings with black holes in the center that blast out energy. That's creepy. As a side note, one of the things I didn't get a chance to do when I was sketching through all of those is I had ideas about possibly just taking the sphere drone idea and then just having it with spikes coming out. Maybe the spikes are guns. Maybe they're just stabby stab weapons. Maybe some are antennas. Maybe some are swords. And who knows? Maybe it's something where they are all different sizes and they can grow in and out of the surface. I mean, now I'm just thinking of really weird stuff, but that's the point of thumbnailing, is to think through really weird stuff and then put all of the weird ideas together simultaneously and look at them and just be like, oh wow, this totally opened up the way I'm looking at this world. So now going back to I think the main reason why I stretched him out and made his legs longer here is specifically because I'm thinking for the cyborg, we want to push the contrast of making this shoulder, like we notice right now, his shoulders are like 1.5 of these squares wide. So let's say that the cyborg is maybe 2.5 squares wide. Like he's big. Maybe make him so that he's almost like the Hulk of this world. In fact, you might even consider the possibility that he's so much of a cyborg that maybe it's just like you might want to move away from augmented human and move more into it's a mech design with a human head attached to it. Like you almost might want to design him like a Gundam. Maybe he's got like a rack of missile launchers on his shoulder. Let's see here. I see Ivan in the chat. He says, I've logged in from East Africa. I love your tutorials. Well, thank you, Ivan. Thank you for joining us. We're doing some character designs today. Going over some of Tyler's characters here. Just exploring, playing with them. I'm going to scoot the drone over to the left a little bit so I can have a little bit more room to play. Now, I will also tell you that mech design, I'm not going to get anything I'm not going to guarantee you anything impressive because even though I loved Robotech or Macross as a kid, designing mechs have never been my strong suit. They've never been something that that I've spent a lot of time doing. So I don't think that I'm going to come up with a great mech design right off the bat here. But again, this is just a starting point. In fact, as I'm looking at this, I'm thinking to myself, what if he's more like a tank that has a human head attached? How about that? Maybe he's got treads, but they're treads that maybe I'm not going to draw a profile right here, but maybe they're treads that can angle so that he can actually go upstairs, like treads that could tilt down so that now he can walk on the treads. Maybe look at some of the Boston Dynamics robot designs for some inspiration. Let's see here. Tyler says, I'm designing some of Alexi's other Android bodies at the moment. I'm working on a Gundam mixed with a Hulkbuster design. All right, well, that's good. It sounds like you've definitely, got the whole Iron Man idea of he's got multiple forms that he can use. I think that's it's a cool way to constantly keep bringing new and innovative, fresh looks into the world that you're building. And, you know, I'll tell you, thinking about the fact that this guy, this cyborg villain, making him something that's as big as a tank, that might be something that would be limiting to some degree in terms of where he can fit in, where he can go. Maybe it's something where it's modular. Maybe he's got a smaller body that plugs into this tank. Or maybe it's something where you think he's a tank for a whole issue, and then at the end of the battle, Alexei beats him or blows up the body, and then you see like, hang on, maybe you see like maybe you see like tiny cyborg head on robot spider legs comes running off, and he's like, you know, you beat me today, but I'll get you tomorrow. Screw you for blowing up my body. In fact, you could almost see, this is where the reason why I like, designing these things sort of all at once and doing them in thumbnails. For me, the magic of the thumbnail process is that your imagination keeps coming up with ideas and you can just play with them. Let's do the treads like this. But maybe it's something where every time he gets defeated, his body or his head escapes in a different manner. So the first time he fights, maybe he turns into that little spider thing. Maybe another time his body is slightly different and his head sprouts, or the base of the head sprouts these cool metal wings. And he's like a little harpy, like, ah! And now his head flies off instead of crawling off. Let's see here. So we're getting close to an hour. And I think what I want to do here is I want to go back to your original designs and just start with those and say, okay, let's just push those original designs, because I tend to try and really quickly run away from the simple, basic, like, I don't think there's anything wrong with where you're starting. It's just that my instinct is to say, how far can I push myself from what I've seen before right from the get-go? But now I want to go back real quick and just look at that simple sphere, the less weird proportioned guy that I've got here, and the more regularly human proportion, but beefier, stronger cyborg villain. So let's see here. Johnny Fitz in the chat says, yo, hey Johnny, how's it going, man? Thanks for showing up. Let's see here. Tyler says, the weird thing is that I'm still a junior in high school. Well, you know what? It's the fact that you're starting this early and you're already this far along, man, you've got a great future with creativity and the arts, because I know that I couldn't draw this well when I was in high school. My stuff was garbage, trash, dumpster fire. So, I mean, I think it's awesome that you are starting this early. Um, you know, run with it, keep going. I will tell you that the biggest thing that I wish I had started doing when I was your age was as soon as you're able to start taking figure drawing classes with a live model. It will improve your art so much. Um, there are sometimes there are clothed model sessions there because I've gone to places where they will let artists that are under the age of 18 go to nude models if you get a permission slip from signed from your parents. But generally speaking, for working from nude models, it shows the 18 just because the person's nude, but there's nothing sexy about it. It's really about studying the human form and like it's about studying form, volume, pose, gesture, all of those things. Like as soon as you're able to start doing that, look for something in your area when when you hit 18, or maybe at your local community college or whatever college you end up going to. Hopefully they will have life drawing classes. So let's see here. Tyler says the reason that won't work is because Cutthroat, the cyborg, is the villain's answer to Alex's mortality. Alex will never Alexi's morality. Alexi will never kill a human, but he'll destroy a robot. And he says, what does he do against a mindless cyborg? So that's the abyss moment in his hero's journey. All right, that's cool. You thought about that in the story. Johnny says, why would you not grow this beard? Dude, you have a 5 o'clock shadow. You know what? I have a perpetual 5 o'clock shadow because I just have really sensitive skin, so I can't shave with a razor. I have to use like clippers, electric clippers. And if I grow a beard, my face is irritated. If I shave down to like baby smooth skin, my face is irritated when the hairs start growing out. Hence perpetual 5 o'clock shadows. The only way I can survive. See here. Johnny says, I'm good, sleepy. Well, make sure you get enough rest. It's important. And Gary also agrees. If you're going to listen to anybody, don't listen to me. Listen to Gary, creator of Dinosaurs vs. Mars Bots. Says, in my humble opinion, life drawing is perhaps the most useful art class you can take. I continue to take figure drawing classes now. I've been taking them on Zoom with Carl Ganas, but I do miss the in-person drawings. But I'm taking a class every week where I'm looking at models and studying proportion. Excuse me, proportion, anatomy, volume, all of those things. It's a lifelong. I always look at it. It's not a skill to learn. It's a muscle to exercise. The more you do it, the better you get. The less you do it, the weaker you get. But there's never a point when you're going to be done or finished with it. Now, let me come back over here and let's draw. I'm just going to go back to these original designs that you have. And I am going to say, all right, let's really try and stick with just, in fact, I'm using the Snake Eyes as a android, Snake Eyes as a robot. That's my guiding light for redoing these thumbnails here. And in fact, I might change up the pose a little bit just to make him feel more dynamic. Well, if I change the pose too much, it's going to throw off the height. And I don't know how you. This is something also I meant to mention is being that he's got robots that he's using. I don't know how you feel about possibly giving him multiple limbs. And again, that is not me saying, oh, your character needs multiple limbs. That's saying, hey, as long as you're playing with the design and considering different possibilities, multiple limbs is a possibility to consider. I think that's the main thing is I want to encourage playfulness and the fact that they're just drawings. So if you want to take the whatever your concept is and basically in the thumbnail stage just completely break it. Just say whatever I thought I was going to do with this character, I am going to do something that is so 180 degrees from that. This stage before you've started actually making the comic, that is the time to really push your concepts. But I will tell you that changing the pose here, it kind of helps me put a little bit more character into the character. Let's see here. Johnny says, bless you. I said, thank you for when I sneezed. He says, I've been drawing a little again, inking too. Well, you know what? Again, just remember, lean into what brings you joy. Don't feel like you have to do anything for anybody if it doesn't relax you or fulfill you. You know, art is a double-edged sword. There's ways in which it can make us feel amazing. There's ways in which it can affect us emotionally if we let it take control of us. So let the art work for you. You don't work for it. And Gary also says, yes, streams or working from photos is great, but in person is best. So you can really appreciate the shapes and see the slight different vantages. Yeah, I mean, the part of that is when you're in a live room, you can look at the model. And if you're looking at a photo, you might just presume, okay, the arm is just coming at you at, at a particular angle. But in a room, you can actually be like, oh, you stand up a little bit and you move over and you look and like, oh, I thought that was their armpit, but that's actually a little bit of like their hair coming from behind, or that's a different muscle and in the angle that I wasn't seeing it right. And you can actually come back to your drawing now and you can correct something that it just sort of looked like a wonky shape because you didn't know what it is. But once you do know what it is, you're like, oh, well, if I tweak this and then maybe exaggerate it or pull this out or just erase it completely, now it looks like what it's supposed to be, even if it doesn't look like exactly what I'm seeing. So there's, and just getting the sense of things being three-dimensional and forms slowly turning away from you. That is captured so much better, in real life than it is just in a photo. But like I said, I've been enjoying the Zoom classes that I've been taking right now. I really enjoy the instructor, and he makes it work. He makes it feel like just as fun and vital as it is when you are in person. So there are options, and there's places like I actually have it signed up for a subscription for the website Line of Action. They do have a free tier where you can just go in there and just do timed figure drawing from photos, and they have a whole library of photos that you can draw from for free. I've signed up for the paid tier basically because I think the service is so good that I don't want it to go away. So I thought, they're worth, spending a couple bucks a month just to support this service that I think is great. But if you want to practice figure drawing, line-of-action.com. Maybe it is Line of Action, all one word. I don't know. I can't remember off the top of my head. But if you just Google Line of Action drawing, or you can just type in lineofaction.com. I'm sure you'll figure it out. I'll put it in the description of the video. But anyway, now I'm coming in, and the fact that I put him in this pose, I feel like the pose is giving me a little bit more personality. He's making him feel kind of ninja-fied. And I know that when you were asking about character design, you probably were thinking, well, I'm interested in the details. Drawing a silhouette of this guy doesn't do anything for me. But what I want to express to you is that working out a silhouette that really feels exactly how you want to without any detail at all You might not be able to see it right away, but it's super, super powerful. It really does help key in what your character's personality is. What their personality is, their capabilities are. Let's see here. Gary mentions, he says, surprisingly often you're asking yourself, oh, what am I looking at? What am I looking at with the with the figure drawing, with the life drawing? Yeah, that definitely happens because the human form, muscles, what you see in the anatomy books, those muscles change shape. They change shape when you flex. They change shape whether you're looking at them straight on or look at them lengthwise or look at their three quarters. And what might be a very familiar muscle might look like an alien blob to you, depending on the pose the model is taking. Let's see here. And Tyler says, Ashley, this has been extremely helpful. I'm happy to hear it. That's why I'm doing it. That's actually something that I was thinking about. Just, I've been very, very slow about developing my new comic, and it's still not at the point where I'm going to start sharing pages or even character designs. And I realized that for a lot of you guys who've been following for a while or watching for a while, you're here because you're into the comic process. And I thought, what can I do that can speak to that? How can I make videos or live streams that are going to be like, oh, this is useful to me, this is interesting to me? And I thought, you know what, actually just sitting down and helping artists or assisting them or giving feedback, is a way that I could do something that's directly related to comics while I'm still working on my own project in the back burner. So this is something that hopefully I plan to do for a while in the ongoing future. Now, I will also tell you, I don't know if you have seen the TV show Peacemaker, but right now, having just the angled visor in the front, it feels a lot like the character Vigilante. So I do think that when the time comes to refine these, because like I said, I would start off with just like these simple character designs. He's actually starting to feel more like Spider-Man as a robot, which again, also not a bad idea. But what I was going to say is just when the time comes to like for doing the head, like after I got sort of a general profile that I liked, that same thing where I did like a whole bunch of different drawings of the drones, I would do a whole bunch of drawings of just the close-up of the head for designing the head. And I would probably find what I would do is I would look up reference online of all of the characters that this character is similar to, so that you can intentionally say, all right, how do I make my character not look like them? So like looking up Deadpool, looking up Vigilante, the comic book character, looking up Spider-Man, looking up Snake Eyes, and just either having them all on a screen, on a reference board, or having printouts, what have you. Whole point being, pull up the artwork that your characters look like, and not to copy them, but to say, all right, how do I do a character that stands side by side with Spider-Man and Deadpool, and Snake Eyes, but still feels like, how do I do my character that feels different? And forcing yourself to look at those characters that are similar while you're drawing is a handy way, because it's kind of like it's doing tough love. It's making you realize, all right, no matter how unique, like there's only so many ways to do the strong muscle character. There's only so many ways to do the slim athletic character. There's only so many ways to do, you know, the wizard or the genius or the Professor X or the telepath. And when you have all of those characters in front of you, it forces you to say, all right, maybe I need to find a new way to make a character. Maybe you can invent a new way to do this type of character. Like when you have a character who is the strong character, normally you think of them as big and bulky and beefy, but I was just thinking of Battle Chasers because I was listening to Rob Liefeld's podcast where he was talking about it, where you have like, yes, there's a big robot, like a steampunk robot in it, but there's also this little girl with these powerful gauntlets who's like super strong. And the idea of having your strong character be this little girl, that's also an interesting take on the character. And I'm looking at the fact that your guy has normal, you know, human type feet, and I'm thinking maybe that's something to play with in terms of this guy, giving him I still think that there's something to the idea of designing the cyborg almost like a Gundam with a human head plugged onto it. Like I would lean away from just, oh, big, strong guy who has cybernetic parts and lean into Frankenstein. Again, I'm a horror fan, so that's my horror influences coming in. But what I'm also saying is that it's another way to make your character feel different from other cyborgs. Like when in Star Trek with those villains, the Borg are scary looking. You know, they are terrifying. The Borg lean into Frankenstein. So maybe when it comes to the same way I was talking about for your main character, comparing and contrasting him with Deadpool or Snake Eyes, maybe for this guy, comparing him against Frankenstein or the Borg, or what are some other monsters that are made up of like multiple creatures? Maybe, I don't know, the Terminator, obviously. And that's another thing. We didn't even talk about reference. Let's see here. I see Hyper Yammies in the chat and says, Jeremy, I finally made it back again. You should buy some comic book omnibuses. I have some omnibuses, but thank you for the feedback. Let's see. I've got an omnibus for X-Men, the Grant Morrison X-Men run. It's like in 3 massive omnibus volumes. And I also have the Ultimates Volume 1 and Volume 2 with Brian Hitch and so Mark Miller who wrote the Ultimates. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's Miller. I know it's spelled Millar and everyone calls it Millar, but I've heard him in interviews specifically like he just doesn't bother correcting Americans anymore. But it is Miller, just, you know, with an A instead of an ER. So I am still coming back to that idea of the head of the cyborg just being this isolated piece here. And in fact, I think I am going to, let's do this. Take the drone, move it out of the way so I can take this guy. So I can take the cyborg and move him right next to our hero. Because this was the actual point that I wanted to get into. This was the point that I'm going to keep drawing for like another, 15, 20 minutes, however long it takes for me to get all 3 of them together. But what I wanted to say is you want to, for your main characters, you want to have them side by side so that you can really look and see, all right, if you want one guy to be broad-shouldered, you have another one be narrow-shouldered. If you want one guy to be rounded, you maybe have another one be spiky. Let's see here. It's a chance to look at them and tweak their character designs specifically to create contrast between the characters. So if you had a scene when they're fighting and they're backlit, they're on a rooftop and the sun is setting, so that they're just in silhouette, you want to have it so if they're fighting in profile, in silhouette, you can still tell who is who. You want them to read, not just for a function of storytelling, but because that is the essence of good character design. You want them to really express, express their look and their design. And I see we've also got HJ Mars in the chat. Thanks for joining in. Yeah, I'm drawing Tyler's characters. I'm going through here and we're just looking at them and taking some different approaches, different takes on them. Just seeing how we can make them stand out and contrast against each other. So yeah, thank you for joining. Let's see here. Tyler also says, something I left out of that Instagram post was that Alexi is one of my versions of mutants. I call them enhanced, but they all have super strength, enhanced speed, durability, so on and so forth. Alexi splits a tree in two with a single punch in frustration when he thinks the villain has permanently stumped him. Well, I'm curious, does his power to control robots, is that part of his enhanced powers, or is it something where that is a whole separate power and his actual powers are him having a super strength? I ask because honestly, I think it's kind of cool, the idea of him, if he's got this power to control robots, maybe that's something where, in contrast, his physical form maybe might not be super powerful. But anyway, let me see here. I'll put a little dot. Let me zoom in so you guys can see what I'm doing here. A little dot there for one of his eyes. And the nice thing about this whole silhouette method that I mentioned, where you're just kind of drawing in chunks and adding and cutting away, is that I'm using a fairly large brush right now, kind of working big and chunky. If you go to a small brush, all of a sudden, every line, you can immediately go to oh my God, this is so detailed. It's not about detailed. A lot of times detail is just the contrast between the big and the small. So as you can see here, I'm drawing these wires just coming out of the head, plugging into the torso. And all of a sudden, I can just say, all right, he's got these wires just snaking all over his body. Now, this is something, remember, if you're going to be doing a comic of this, you don't want to design a character where every single page you draw is going to be a pain in the ass. You want every page to be interesting. But while I could very easily cover his entire body with all of these cords, you probably want to say, all right, I'm just going to have 4 or 5 on each limb. That way, almost like the way Wolverine, you might want to draw him well, I don't want to draw every single hair on his body. That's a pain in the ass. You might want to just simplify. But, as I zoom out, all of a sudden, just by adding those things, or adding, I don't know, some antenna on his shoulder, it's not about making this character super detailed. It's simply the fact that now with these smaller lines, I can add little refinements that just feel like he's super detailed. But it's really just little small touches here and there, a couple of bumps, or maybe even some Batman-like fins on his arm. Like how Batman's got those little, fins that, in the Christian Bale, he can use them to cut and chop at his enemies. Maybe he's got some of these little fins on him. This guy is built, obviously, for destruction and devastation. Let's see here. Well, HJ Mars says, even your chunky art is incredible. That is very kind of you to say. That's very flattering. Thank you. Um, Tyler says, by the way, Mars is more or less my boss. I'm a writer for a group of people that want to start a comics company. He says he runs it for the most part. And he says, I wouldn't say boss. I would say I co-founded the group, but we do work together a lot. All right, well, that's great. It's always great to have collaborators that are communicating and supporting each other. That it sounds like you guys have a great collaboration going. So, I mean, in drawing this and making him spiky, it already makes me want to come back to here and look for ways to refine Alexei. Or at least Alexei's his android. In fact, really, I look at the designs you already have, and I see the way that you've got his upper body, like the robot, the android pectoral muscles separated from the android abs from the pelvis. And I can just take those forms, like the way that you separated them, and just sort of accentuate them. So coming in and then down, then up, then down. I think that's a little too large. Let me go a little bit smaller here with the eraser. And then by the same token, coming in here and going down, up, down, up. And drawing this in silhouette, it helps you think graphically. It helps you say, all right, what are going to be how do I put in details that I really want to read? When you're drawing him in an actual comic page, you're like, all right, what are like the very bare basic details that identify this character? And the silhouette helps you decide what you want those details, what you want those features to be. I mean, he's feeling more and more like a ninja with each drawing, with each line that I'm putting in here. And I don't think that's a bad thing, actually. I like ninjas. I mean, who doesn't like ninjas? Ninjas are awesome. For some reason, I still like the idea of him having kind of like athletic thighs. And this is just me liking to play with contrast, but him having athletic thighs and then maybe going with like a super skinny, him being an android, having legs that are almost like fins. Like almost as if his legs were like batons. Like if you were to swing it around, it'd be like one of those extendable batons. It's a weapon that you just whack. So it's like he's balanced on these little weapons. So maybe kicking becomes a lot more of his fighting style. And I also know, I mean, obviously, if this is a world that you're just starting to build, working out the different fighting styles, it might be that each of the different android bodies he has a different fighting style. But I mean, that's a lot of world building to take in all at once. I will go back to that book that I recommended in the beginning, the Skillful Huntsman. I highly, highly, highly recommend that. Like even if you don't have a budget, a big budget for it, maybe for like I don't know, your next birthday or whatever, you can ask for an Amazon gift card or ask somebody to go to your local bookstore and pick up a copy. But that book is super, super, super valuable for like I've just shown you a few different options. And when I'm done with the live stream, I'm going to take all of these designs and I'm going to post them on the community section of my channel. So, and I'll tag you so that you can find them. And I'll also post them on Instagram as well. But that book has these multiple examples of different people doing this kind of design or character development or world development. Now, I still think that there's more that needs to happen with this guy to differentiate him a little bit. But I want to, because we've been going for a while now, I want to jump over back to the drone one more time. Because even though I spent a lot of time on the drone in the beginning, the point I want to make is that when you're designing characters together to work as a unit or how they're going to evolve in a story, you want to see how these characters are going to interact, because I can already mentally imagine a scene where you've got Alexei fighting the cyborg and maybe 3 of these drones flying around him all at once. They're all in like one big action mass, and he's like, maybe he's got a laser sword in one hand and a cannon, in the other, and he's just sort of like just spinning and fighting these guys on all sides, swirling around him. But and that's the reason why having them all stand out and read distinctly is something that I consider very, very important. But in looking at how these other characters are, it makes me want to try something a little more simple, just in comparison to the other characters. So let's say that you still have those jet engines that keep him hovering. Although one thing I am going to do is I'm going to make them more sort of like drone engines. In fact, that's an idea. That is an idea. Let's whoops that way, whoops that way, this. Thickening up the front side so it'll hopefully read. Or actually, let's say that this one is, you're looking down at it. Go back down to a small. So I don't know how well, in fact, let me just undo, because this will give me the space to draw the blades in there so you can actually get a sense of what I'm trying to express, which is And to be honest, this is something where I'm trying to communicate that there's spinning blades in here. I think if I were drawing this in an actual comic, I would probably just have that centerpiece and then leave the rest of it empty. And I would just maybe with color give that sense of, oh, there are blade, you know. And what I'm actually I'm just trying to see how this looks in silhouette. But in reality, what I imagine is if I were to draw like a 3/4 view of this character, it'd be like, okay, it's got four of these. I mean, hell, maybe they're just completely aligned like that. Four of these drone-like blades, propeller blades, that are just mounted to the side. And maybe they angle up or down as needed. Maybe they twist outward. You know, it's like a ball socket joint. So it just kind of goes up, down, left, right, does whatever it needs to navigate. But when you look at it in silhouette, as a matter of fact, yeah, I am just going to erase what's inside of there. Let's see here. I got caught up in the drawing for a second and went away from the chat. Let's see. HJ Mars says, one of my favorite parts of the Batman Begins is how the gear he accrues becomes part of the suit and gives them actual uses other than just aesthetic. I think that that's great. I mean, that's a fantastic Batman origin story in that they show you, you know, like even with the helmet and having the ears, you know, the points, like they make the whole mythology work. I think that that's great. And HJ Mars did Google the book, the Skillful Huntsman. Definitely check that out. And Harmless Horror says, I'm going to redraw Cutthroat in that intimidating style. Let's see here. HJ Mars says, have you read Stan Lee's Just Imagine? I got both volumes for Christmas, straight after they were made free on the DC Comics app. You know, I've read some of the you know what? I don't think I read Just Imagine. I think I read the DC Amalgam, where it was like it was still kind of a similar premise where it was like Marvel and DC characters mashed together. Like they had Batman with Wolverine as Dark Claw. It was similar to the Just Imagine. I remember the era when they came out, but I can't say that I remember much of it because my ass is old. I was reading that stuff when it was coming out on the shelf. So that was well over 20 years ago. But yeah, I mean, I love Stan Lee's stuff, and I think he's, you know, done a lot of, you know, obviously, you know, he's co-created so much of our modern day superhero pop culture. Okay, anyway, originally when I started sketching this, I wasn't even thinking about these blades or these drone, you know, these drone propeller blades. Originally, I was just gonna surround him with spikes because I thought that maybe a spiky sphere might go back to that thing I was saying about aggressive forms versus peaceful forms. But I think that the drone thing, maybe with him possibly having, and I want to break this sense that we're looking straight forward, but Maybe this with him having some sort of machine gun mounted underneath. I'm zoomed out a little bit much. That's the thing. I'm drawing more zoomed in for you guys. When I work on my own, I intentionally work on thumbnails like super tiny because it keeps me from putting detail in. And when you look at your work really, really small, it forces you to see what does and doesn't read. And then you realize, oh, wait, I need to eliminate this detail, because when you shrink it down, that detail just disappears and it makes the piece more cluttered. And what you really want to do is just see, like, if it reads super tiny, it'll read no matter what. And that's what you really want in terms of your character designs, readability. And that comes back to this whole entire exercise, drawing in silhouette, designing things in silhouette. It's an exercise in readability, because you can just put a bunch of blobs on here and it might seem like, oh, well, this is a cool shape and it looks interesting. But then when you zoom out, if it doesn't read, if it doesn't communicate something, if it doesn't communicate something about the function of the character or the character's gear, or it doesn't communicate something about their personality or their, their purpose, then it's got to go. It's got to go. To me, that's the essence of character design. I may have gotten a little bit too, like, just in that whole thing about design, I thought that it would make this gun read more like a gun if I added that that ammo box, that round ammo case underneath, but it really did not add to that. So maybe it's something more like a pod that's underneath. Something else I would recommend, and I didn't pull this book up earlier, but if you can find any of the Art of Metal Gear books, given the fact that there's androids and cyborgs and robots as a ongoing theme in your series, I'd say that Metal Gear can have a lot of inspiration for your work. And in fact, maybe that's even something to consider for your character. Like I'd mentioned Snake Eyes and Spider-Man and Deadpool. Maybe it's an idea of saying, well, what would your character look like if it was Solid Snake, but completely as a robot? So let's see here. Let's see here. Tyler says, Mars, please say that we're adding Alexibot and the other characters to our canon. It would work incredibly well. Mars says, I already have. Okay, you got to get it. Yeah, I don't want to sit there and just reread your. I don't want to divulge the secrets, the inner workings of your publishing company. But anyway, so these are just some thoughts. I will tell you that even what I did here, I still feel like I didn't nail redesigning the Alexibot. I feel like there's definitely more here to get to a character that has a more unique feel. Like this feels so far like a less unique version of your character. Like I would say that your original design that you have there feels more unique than what I did here. Normally what I will do is I'll do pages and pages of these redesigns until I'll do pages and pages of these thumbnails until I get to one that really does feel unique. What I would probably do though is I actually feel like the version of the drone and the cyborg villain that I have on the screen, these two feel like they do work. And what I would probably do is I would keep them on the screen while I would draw, like, I don't know, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I would just, each one of these numbers would represent a different version of that until I got ones and I could look at them all side by side and say, okay, this really feels like a character who feels like he's got a panther-like slender quality, but he feels heroic. But he also captures sort of some personality quirks. Plus, maybe there's a feature to me that's interesting or distinct. Like I started making these legs into fins, but who knows? Maybe it's a matter of just saying, screw it. I'm just full on gonna make it like thigh and then stick. And then the foot is almost shaped like a wedge that can also be a club. Now, again, this isn't the answer. This is me looking at, these are the types of things that I try when I'm doing character designs. I just, whatever outlandish thing pops into my head, really quickly, I just get it down. And I'll do another version and another version and another version. So you can take all of these and just keep working through until you eventually get to a design that makes you and your collaborators happy and that embodies the feelings that you want, that you're trying to express. So that is the biggest thing I want to communicate to you, is that design is iterative, meaning it's multiple iterations. If you just sit there and have one drawing that you're working on and you draw and erase and draw and erase and draw and erase, you can end up chasing your own tail or tweaking it a little bit and then deciding, well, I like this piece, but not that other piece. Whereas if you do multiple drawings and you can look at them all side by side, you might take, pieces from 1, 3, 5, and 6, and you may say, all right, this last one, number 8, I'm going to draw it with the head of number 1, the arms of number 3, the feet or the thighs of number 5, and just combine them all until you get one that is, oh, this is it. This is the character. It's a lot easier. We can see all of those pieces in front of you. So let's see here. And Tyler also says, I have 4 android bodies designed: stealth, tank, blade, and main. They said the one you're working with is the main body. All right, well, definitely as you go through design these, put the different bodies. See what happens when you put his different bodies together. And maybe it's something where whatever you decide to do with his eyes, whether it's keeping the simple like slanted visor, whatever it is that you do with them, maybe it's something where there's one visual element. And it could just be maybe a symbol on his chest or an insignia that he has. Superman's got his S, Batman's got the bat symbol. Maybe he's got one particular visual element that whenever you see it on a design, you're like, oh, it's him. And then maybe at one point you've got like a bunch of drones in a story that are all doing an attack. And then you see whatever that, let's just say it's like a style, maybe his symbol is like a stylized A. I mean, that's a symbol from, I think, Disney's Atlantis. But anyway, you see a drone and he's infiltrated, like you see a bunch of drones getting ready to infiltrate a building and attack it. And then you see one of the drones has his symbol. And you're like, oh my God, he built a drone to infiltrate the drones. There's stuff like that you can do. Point being is that when as you're working through the designs of his other androids, think about how you can visually make them different, but create some sort of visual symbol that unites them. So you always know that they're different versions of him. Oh, you know what? Well, that you said that his visor is his signature. Here's an idea. Why not make his visor an A? So let me see here. Let me just draw a simple head here. and fill that. And maybe his visor instead of pointing down, maybe his visor makes an A. So his visor is literally like his logo. Now, it could be like that. Maybe you could full bore just go ahead and say, all right, let's just complete it and make it an A. Now, that's an interesting idea. Maybe it's something where it looks like you can read it as a triangle floating in the middle of his face, or you can read it as an A. You know, it can have multiple readings depending on how you look at it. I don't know, something to play with, something to think about. But if you've got that visual symbol, then you can say, no matter what, whether it's his visor or maybe if like the other one is a tank buster, and it doesn't have a face in the same way that the this one, the main body, has like a head with a face on it. Maybe that symbol just becomes like all of them will have some sort of light up LED type surface that has the symbol that is like the A for Alexi. You know, suggestion, thought. You know. Anyways, let's see here. Let's see. Mars says, "This is my first time catching up with your live streams, and thanks to Tyler. It's very motivating. I thank you for that. You're incredible at what you do. Thank you so much for the kind words. That's very humbling. I consider myself. What I like to say is that I'm sharing my own continuing art education because I'm learning every day. Even though I've published comics, I still take classes. I take classes on storytelling and storyboarding. I take classes on figure drawing. You know, I work a creative day job, but I'm a lifelong student. And what what I try to do is just share my learning process in the hope that it helps other people become better at what they want to do. But thank you so much for the kind words. I really appreciate that. See here. Yeah. Tyler says I'm using that, and I'll try that. Good. And like I said, all of these things that I'm suggesting are suggestions for approaches to find the answer. None of these are to say this is what your character design should be, because only you can answer that. You know in your heart what feels right for your characters. But I'd like to say that all the things I'm suggesting are more of approaches and ways to develop and refine those ideas. And I see Keith in ADHD says, I stumbled across your channel last night and I find you streaming this afternoon. This is neat. Well, Keith, please, I invite you to subscribe. I do live streams every Wednesday, 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. I usually go for an hour. We went extra long today because we had a really interesting topic doing drawovers of Tyler's designs. And we've been having a lot of fun with it. So yeah, definitely please subscribe, check out, and come back. Welcome. Let's see here. And Tyler says, I have an idea. I'll keep the visor as is, and I'll put the A on his shoulders. And Mars says the triangle is such a cool idea because the triangle is similar to the Greek letter delta, which means fourth in order, and Alexi has four main bodies. Hey, there you go, guys. You're tying it all together. Well, I'll post these for you both on Instagram and on the community tab for the YouTube channel. And to wrap up here, as we usually do, I will really quickly go back and give you guys the reminder that I've got 4 new prints that I recently finished my Gorgon emerging. So I've got her coming out of a sea of snakes there, and it comes in 16 by 20 and 8 by 10. You can get these at my website, which is jeremy.net. There's links in the description for the video. And I've got them in 4 different colors. I've got them in red, blue, green, and then I have a warm gray version. So feel free to head on over to my website and pick those up. Let's see here. And if you want to go direct, like, you can find them from just going to jeremy.net. And here we go. Back to me, to the big screen. So, on that note, if you enjoy these live streams, we'd like to get bonus live streams twice a month, where we dig into some of the best art books around, trying to suck out all the knowledge we can. If you would like to get access to an online digital archive where you can read my comic books, if you would like to get access to a Patreon exclusive Discord server where we share feedback, tips, art talk, we share tools, share works in progress, and just have general art talk and more, go deeper into the type of stuff that we do here, you can become a Patreon subscriber for as little as $2 a month. Go to patreon.com/Jeremy. That's patreon.com/GERIMI. If you'd like to get a free digital sketchbook, if you'd like to get work in progress animated GIFs delivered right to your inbox, if you'd like to get blog posts about what I'm reading, what I'm watching, what's inspiring you creatively, you can sign up for my free monthly newsletter at newsletter.jeremy.net. And if you'd like to purchase physical copies of my comic books, or if you read on Comixology, you can go to amazon.jeremy.net. You can pick up books like my first graphic novel, Eye of the Gods. It is a standalone psychological thriller about a man cursed with visions he cannot control. You can also check out my most recent comic book, Morning Star. It is the story of Lucifer's fall from heaven, but told as a Western. It's an 8-issue series. Volume 1 contains issues 1 through 4. Volume 2 contains issues 5 through 8. Both volumes, it's the conclusions of the series. Both volumes have extensive back matter, character sketches, thumbnails, page layouts, photo reference, and more. I basically show you how I put the whole book together. And there are book flip-throughs on the homepage of my YouTube channel. So you can head on over to my YouTube channel. If you're watching on Twitch or on Facebook, there should be links on the About tab, or if you just go to my homepage of my YouTube channel, there should be links there. So on that note, we're going to wrap it up here. Again, I want to thank Tyler for allowing me to share his work and do these. Tyler says, "Thank you, Jeremy. This has been the coolest thing I've ever gotten to do with my artwork." No, the coolest thing ever is going to be when you publish your own comic. That's going to be the coolest thing, and I look forward to seeing it. Again, that Tyler, let me flip back over. You guys can check out Tyler's work at Harmless Horrors on Instagram. So definitely go check Tyler out. And we're gonna see what you do with all these great character designs and your great work with you in Mars. So guys, thank you so much. You know what? If you're not subscribed, please subscribe. If you have friends you think would dig this that are into comics or creativity or character design, please share it with anybody you think would enjoy it. That's it for now. Go be creative.